The sharp edges and unyielding facades of the towering buildings around her seemed to work against Maya, blocking her view of the horizon as she searched for clarity amid the urban sprawl. The crisp air brushed against her face as she took a tentative step onto the concrete, her eyes searching the landscape with a small bit of hope. Twilight crept in, casting jagged shadows from the surrounding foliage across the pavement. With each step, the clear open view of the sky she longed for seemed to slip further away. She felt a wave of disappointment as she looked around. The dense, unrelenting structures closed in around her, a stark contrast to the open sky she craved. There were no twinkling stars here, no endless expanse to get lost in, only the oppressive closeness of the city that made her feel small and alone. She felt herself sink into despair, her shoulders slumping as reality set in. What was I expecting? She thought bitterly, her gaze dropping to the cracked pavement. But even through the disappointment, a hint of determination rose up. The stars were hidden for now, but she wasn't giving up. She would find them. The stairwell door creaked shut behind Maya, leaving her alone in a dim hallway. The quiet space gave her a moment to breathe, and she breathed in the stale air, her shoulders relaxing. Despite the silence, her footsteps echoed as she climbed the stairs, a reminder of her solitude. At the top, she paused before a plain door that somehow felt significant. "What am I even hoping for?" she muttered, frowning. Glancing over her shoulder to make sure she was alone, she reached for the door, as if it might react to her touch. Her fingers brushed the cool metal of the handle. She turned it, expecting resistance, and found it. Of course it was locked. She tried again, then again, frustration tightening inside her. Why do I do this? Keep choosing things that are out of reach. After a few more attempts, her resolve slipped away, and she let go of the handle with a defeated sigh. The door wasn't going to open, and maybe, just maybe, that was for the best. Some things were meant to stay closed. Maya turned and headed back down the stairs with a resigned shrug. Just then, as if summoned by frustration, she saw the older man on the flight below. He walked with the same slow, measured steps, his gaze meeting hers briefly before he continued on his way. A curious but uneasy feeling stirred in her chest. Why does he keep showing up? She watched him disappear, but the question lingered unanswered. The stairwell's familiar hum enveloped Maya as she returned later that day, the space feeling strangely familiar, clutching a small set of makeshift tools, their weight giving her something solid to hold on to. She faced the door once more. "I can do this," she repeated to herself, a quiet mantra of determination. The door was no longer just an obstacle, it was a test she had to pass. Her parents always said her stubbornness would be her downfall, but as she stood before the door, she didn't care. She was determined to prove herself. The only sound in the eerie silence was the soft rustle of her clothes as she shifted her weight. The frayed seams of her jacket showed how often she'd been here. As she worked the lock with focused precision, "I'll get in," she muttered. "I'll figure it out." Maya's focus was interrupted by soft footsteps below, sending a quick chill through her. A prickling sensation crept up the back of her neck, the unmistakable feeling of being watched. She glanced down the stairs and met the gaze of the older man standing in the doorway. His eyes swept over her in a brief, intense moment, as if he'd seen straight through her. Without a word, he continued his slow, deliberate walk. Maya turned back to the lock, wondering if he had even noticed her. Still, the feeling of being watched lingered, his piercing gaze sticking with her. She shook her head, trying to dismiss the unease, but it stayed close, heavier than she wanted to admit. Was he watching her more closely this time? A quiet voice inside her whispered that he was holding something back. But what? And why did his presence feel more and more tied to the mystery she was trying to unravel? Even after he disappeared into the quiet of the building, she couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. Not in the halls, but in her mind. Maya's resolve was even stronger now that it had been the last time she stood at this door. Her fingers traced the handle, testing the handle for even the slightest give. Today felt different. She moved with more purpose, her movements more sure. There has to be a way, she thought, her mind racing, but the door wouldn't budge. She stayed focused. This door had become both a challenge and a goal. The older man walked by again, quiet and enigmatic. As always, his eyes met hers for a moment, but he said nothing, his expression unreadable. Maya wondered if he knew she came here every day, and she couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching her, almost waiting. Why am I letting him get to me? He's just a stranger. Yet, she couldn't deny the unease that crept over her whenever he passed. It wasn't just him, though. It was the reminder of her own stagnation, of being close to something yet always just out of reach. Her determination grew with each failed attempt. Returning to the stairwell, she threw her weight against the unyielding door, refusing to surrender. The shifting season brought her a change in the air, a whisper of hope, or maybe the dawning realization that this pursuit could last forever. The elderly man reappeared, his presence as predictable as it was mysterious. His fleeting glance offered no answers, no silent wisdom. Maya's frustration grew, the possibility creeping in that he was nothing more than a figure caught in the orbit of her obsession. The locked door stood unchanged, mirroring the unchanging nature of her situation, a stark reminder that some things remained stubbornly closed. Lost in thought, Maya absently explored her new surroundings as she walked down the hallway. The creaky floors and muffled voices from the apartments were still unfamiliar, but slowly the place was beginning to feel like home. Despite how strange the building felt, there was something about it that hinted it could feel like hers one day. She wondered if she would ever really belong here, or if she was destined to feel like an outsider forever. Turning a corner with her eyes cast downward, she didn't notice the maintenance man stepping out of an apartment until they nearly collided. "Oops, sorry," she mumbled, stepping back. "I didn't see you there." Warmth rose in her cheeks, smooth, she thought. The maintenance man chuckled softly, adjusting his grip on his toolbox. Maya caught sight of his name tag, Carl Hensley. Before her gaze moved up to his broad frame, he was stocky and built for hard work. His flannel shirt faded with age and his sleeves rolled to the elbows, revealing muscular forms marked by years of labor. Worn jeans, scuffed work boots completed the picture. His silver-flecked beard framed a face that looked like it had weathered a lot, and his deep-set eyes held a quiet steadiness that was both comforting and distant. Carl had the feel of a man who did things the same way every day. Every step seemed deliberate, every gesture practiced. Maya felt a flicker of envy at his certainty. I bet he never second-guesses himself, she mused, but the thought faded quickly. No, I don't want to be that person. I need to keep moving forward, keep searching for something more. As Carl walked away, a thought struck her, and she called out, "Wait, excuse me." He turned, eyebrows raised. Maya's heart raced as she gathered her courage. "Yes?" he asked. After a brief hesitation, she said, "I was wondering about the rooftop. Is there a way to access it?" Carl studied her with a curious frown. She felt a moment of doubt. Had she said something wrong? She pushed the feeling aside and reminded herself to stay calm. "Why do you want to go up there?" he asked, his tone curious, almost protective. Maya paused, then answered softly, her voice taking on a softer tone. "I want to see the stars." He watched her weigh her words. Maya's heart thudded in her chest. I sound silly, she thought. Who wants to climb onto a roof just to look at the stars? Stars, huh? He said, more skeptical now. Why do you want to go up there? She swallowed, memories rising unbidden. When I was little, my grandpa and I would watch the stars together, she said, her voice softening. It always brought me peace, and now it's one of the few things that remind me of him. Her eyes glistened. I just want a quiet place to look at the stars again and remind her those nights. Her cheeks warmed. She hadn't meant to be emotional, but the stars were her last connection to him. It wasn't just stargazing. It was remembering a time when life made sense. Carl's brow furrowed as he studied her. She couldn't tell if he was sympathetic or dismissive. He probably thinks I'm just some sentimental girl, she thought. Finally, he spoke, his voice colder than she expected. It's not a place for kids to play. If you want to see the stars, just go out front and look up. Maya nodded, disappointment washing over her. I should have known. He just doesn't get it. She forced a small smile anyway. Being misunderstood wasn't new. She'd always been the one who held on to memories, the one who didn't just move on. I understand, sir. Thank you. Carl nodded curtly and continued on his way, leaving Maya in the awkward silence. She felt foolish for asking, but also proud she tried. As she watched him walk away, a new resolve took hold. Next time, I'll find a way up there myself. No one's going to stop me. With renewed determination, she headed down the hall. Just around the corner, the older man had been listening to the entire conversation. His eyes flickered for a moment before he quietly walked away. Maya's hand trembled slightly as she reached for the familiar doorknob. Countless failed attempts flashed through her mind, each one sharp reminder of disappointment. Yet a small hope lingered, telling her this time might be different. It had to be. With a deep breath, she opened the door. The dimly lit stairwell greeted her with the scent of an old concrete. As her heart pounded, a bit of doubt pushed in. What if it's still locked? What if I'm just setting myself up for more heartache? Pushing the thoughts aside, Maya stepped into the unknown. Her breath echoed in the silent stairwell as she climbed, each step making her chest feel more strained. Shadows danced along the walls, making her doubts harder to ignore. Why am I doing this? Why does it matter so much? Even as her resolve wavered, she clung to that small spark of hope and kept going. At the rooftop door, she hesitated, her chest tightened as she exhaled. What if it's locked again? Her fingers traced the cold metal handle. It's just a door. But it's more than that. It's freedom. It's my escape. Closing her eyes, she summoned the memory of stargazing with her grandfather. A small, steady comfort. This is for him, she told herself, and this is for me. With newfound determination, she wrapped her hand around the handle. Her heart pounded as she twisted it and pushed. She froze, breath held tight in her chest. The stairwell fell silent, mirroring her own stillness as she waited for the moment of truth. Everything she'd been pushing toward, coming down to this.